Because this book doesn't do as much into subnetting, because subnetting is getting less and less needed to be done. Because, like I told you, how you're going to do it in most places if you need to. Pick yourself the A-class 10 network and use that inside yours, and then use the first octet for your subnets on it, or the first and second octet on it. And you don't have to worry about all the stuff we're going to look at here. And then if you're doing IP version 6, which we're moving more and more towards, you don't have to worry about borrowing bits at all in there, because they left you a whole hextet to use. So there's no reason. You could do the complicated if you want, but there's no reason to, because you've got tens of thousands of subnets available to you. So if you did want to make it complicated, you could. All right. Avery.
Yeah.
John.
Yeah.
Nicholas. Mark. Isaiah. Evan.
Yeah.
Savannah. Kevin. Casey. I've got 4 of you here. All right. So with subnetting, try to keep this, when I say it's less of a thing now than it has been, but still, if you go take certification tests on networking, it's going to pop up. Okay, on fundamental networking certification tests. It could also pop up on an employment test still with plenty of places. My experience has been when I've had to take any of those, sometimes they had ancient stuff on them also, stuff that wasn't even used anymore, where subnetting at least is. And if you know subnetting, you really do have a good knowledge of how networks work. Okay? Because even like when I did Skills USA programming contest last week, or 2 weeks ago, whatever that was, they had RPG listed as one of the 3 languages that they listed as options or languages to use, or other languages was their wording, so you could use anything else for that matter. But they had Java, RPG, I don't know what the other one was, but it's relatively, it's a current one on it. As their other one on there, I'm looking there and going RPG, and RPG is still used. Mohawk, for instance, still uses RPG. But there's very few places use RPG. COBOL is used by a lot, and COBOL is not one of the options they've had on there. But it's not taught anymore, but a working on your backbone programming is done in COBOL. It's still out there. The front end is done in Java or HTML or something else on it, but the back end in a lot of cases is sitting there in COBOL. The RPG was an IBM product for a specific set of machines, although you could get to work on some other stuff, but it was written for their specific mid-range computers by IBM, which is Report Program Generator. Now, there is another RPG today, which I know they weren't referencing at that point, but you will see RPG mentioned out there in programming today also, but it's not a language, but it's it's a type of gameplay. And what's that RPG? Anybody know? Because those of you, it's what?
Role playing.
Role playing. Okay? So people that do games have used RPG, but it's a totally different RPG. Okay, and that confused me a little when that stuff started appearing. Wait a minute, RPG? It's not RPG I'm certified in. So, like I've told y'all before, some acronyms have multiple meanings for us, or even my certifications. I've got MCSA twice. It's Microsoft certified, that much is both of them agree on. I've got from back in the early 2000s, Microsoft certified system administrator. They've dropped that one. Certification's still good, but they don't give out that one anymore. It was a few years ago, and then they came out after a year or so of no MCSA, and then when they came out with their new certifications, they came out with an MCSA again, which is Microsoft Certified Solutions Administrator. And I have that one also, so I'm actually MCSA twice. My MCSE is the old one. I don't have the new MCSE. So with subnetting, you're looking at, and we're going to use, to do this stuff, I'm just going to use that network address. What I pulled out of the head is a private address, so, but if you were really doing it out there, you might be using a private address. But the original way subnetting was done, you had been given a public one and you wanted to subnet. Okay? So you've been issued a Class C address or a Class B address and worked on it. Well, with that, we've got one network, right? Subnet mask for that one is what? 255, 255, 255.0. Now, remember, each of these 255s is actually 8 binary ones. Right, follow on that? This is 8 binary zeros. And everywhere there's a binary 1 in subnet mask tells you that's part of the network and of the, is your network, tells you what network that IP address is pointing to, okay? Everywhere there's a binary 0, you know that's a host on whatever network. Does everybody follow that part? Now, you'll also see this as /24, which is counting the number of binary ones. Now, the binary ones all have to come at the beginning, and then all the binary zeros have to come at the end. You can't mix them together. One's in, zeros start. Class B, it was 255, 255, 00. Everybody follow with me on that? Now, with this, if we had this as our network, and we wanted to have instead that we want to manage our network a little bit better. So I'm going to talk from over here. Probably the microphone over here works a little better than the microphone over there, although it picks up both places. It should pick it up a little clearer here. That we've got that single network, but we've realized, wait a minute, we really need this thing split into multiple networks. It would manage a lot better. One, we keep our traffic down on the network because you just have the traffic that applies to that subnet on the subnet, not all of the network's traffic. So you've increased your efficiency. Two, you can secure it down a little bit better. And so we can group them according to what their association is. And you may well group them in the subnet by their job usage, what type of materials they access, etc. For instance, here at the school, I'm not sure if this is exactly how we did it because I've not really dug into it and asked them specifically, but probably we've got students on one subnet, we've got faculty on another subnet. Okay, y'all follow on that? And we've got administration, probably split in a couple of ways on subnets too. In a business, you may well have the regular employees that can access some lower level stuff on a subnet, and then the people that are in the office that get to just certain higher level files, put them on a separate subnet with that stuff on that subnet with them where the others can't get across to it as easily, so it increases your security on it. Okay, so you could split it into several. So let's say that we've got this one. And that now we realize that we want to go and set up, like John's question was a little bit ago. You had 3 subnets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to get 3 subnets out of this network. Does everybody follow on that? What we're going to do is we're going to take out of this octet, we're going to borrow bits from it to add to the network portion. To use in the network portion, and so the host portion is going to go down. Everybody follow? So in this case, we want to get 3 subnets. So the question is, how many bits do we need to borrow to do that? Okay? Now, what I'm going to tell you right now is just used for determining how many bits are we going to borrow. Because we're going to do binary backwards. Okay? Because I've always told you, what I've told you before is that binary columns start that direction, right? In this case, because we're wanting to find how many bits we need to borrow, we're going to do it backwards because we'll borrow off of the left. So I've got 8 bits there. Okay? And I'm going to number off here. So I get a big enough number that's going to take care of the number of subnets I need. Do I follow on that? Now, depending on the equipment you're using, you may have a restriction on there. On older equipment, you could not use the 0 subnet. However, Cisco equipment since about 2002 allows you to use the 0 subnet. And so you can count the 0 subnet as one of your subnets in there. Okay? But in some of the other companies, it just depends on them. You just have to see whether they allow use of the 0 subnet or not, which would be all zeros in the subnet address, okay? So this is Cisco class. All newer equipment of Cisco uses a 0 subnet, so we're going to use a 0 subnet. But just be aware, it may or may not, if you ever encountered on it where it was going to be title and the number on it of how many bits are you going to need to borrow, question on the test is going to tell you whether they use 0 subnets or not, or you're going to have seen on other questions that they did tell you that, and so you know, they didn't tell me that on this one, so don't consider using 0 subnet. So in this case, if we borrow the 1 and the 2, and we're using the 0 subnet, we've actually got 3 subnets available to us. Now the top one's not available to us because that's the broadcast number and we really can't use that one. Okay? Although you do see it used. Well, we only need 3. 0, 1, and 2 will work. Which would be, if we borrow in binary, the 0, 0, 0, 1, and the 1, 0. And we've got our 3 subnets. And we probably can use the 4th one, which is the 1, 1 there, because it really isn't a broadcast address. Okay? Well, we got 4 subnets available to us. How many did we say we needed? 3. So we're set there to just borrow 2 bits. Everybody follow on that part? So, our network address is going to be the 192.168.3 point, in this case, 0. This one's going to be 192.168.3 point. What column's that 1 in? Doing binary correctly. Huh?
The 1's column?
Mm-hmm.
So about, you go which way you going? It's either 64 or the 1.
Doing it this way. Doing it
64.
correctly. It's in the 64s. Okay? That's where this 1 is actually located. It's actually behind here. We've got 6 bits. Okay? We're just looking at the first 2 bits and the 4th octet. Does everybody follow with me now? So its network address is 64. Okay? This one's, so this is going to be our network address. This one's going to be 192.168.3. And where's that one in? Which column?
128.
In the 128s. And this one, there's a one in this 64 and 128, so that's 192. Now, that's out of my way. So that's the network address, okay? And this would work fine for us borrowing 2 bits. But we've actually got one extra address. If we later on decide we need another subnet, we don't have to go back and resubnet our whole address, every machine in our company all over again. We can just add that one we need into the unused one right here. Does everybody follow on that? So when you do it, you want to preferably have at least one extra subnet there for growth. Because remember, computers, things are going to grow. There are going to be more computers around than you had before. Maybe your organization hasn't put wireless in yet. And when they put wireless in, they're going to use that subnet to put their wireless on out there. Because after all, that's going to be a more open subnet right there, so they probably want it off on a separate subnet, not on one of the other subnets. Y'all follow that? Or who knows, or that as we add more gadgets around that we decide to put in, that when we put in a fancy security system, that we put it on its own subnet to all of the security stuff within the company, of putting sensors on all the windows, all the cameras running through the network, etc. Set them all off on their own subnet. And that way it doesn't bother the rest of the traffic of anything. You'll see the needs for lots of subnets, okay? Now, the host. So this is just giving us the network address. And remember that you do get asked about the network address at times. Doesn't tell us anything about host addresses, okay? Hosts are going to actually be, again, the 192.168.3 point, and we got 8 bits here. I think I did right. And remember, there's our line. Now, on the first line here, we know that this is 0, 0 on all of them, okay? The only part that's going to change our host numbers is here. It's going to range from 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1 through 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0. Remember, we can't use all ones because it's a broadcast address. We can't use all zeros because that's the network address. Everybody follow with that part? The other part is you get some of these pieces down good with this lecture too. So, our host numbers are going to range on this. So the first one is going to be 192.168.3 point, and what's its number there? I can do that one real quick. 1, right? This is all zeros in the rest of that last octet. Through, what's our highest one?
62.
It's got a 0, 0 here again, and then it's got all of this. So that's the 1, the 2s, 4s, 8s, 16s, 32s. So 48.
62.
Huh?
62.
Yeah, 62 sounds right. 62 is right. So I'm going to show you all a shortcut in just a minute. Which is why I just looked up and knew for sure 62 was right on this. So, and the only difference is that last octet's changing on that. Y'all follow on that? So this one's actually 192.168.3.62. Has everybody got me with that? Without me writing all of that out there. We'll protect my fingers up here. Quite often when I'm doing this, I'll just give you the last octet number on the chart.
when I show students. So if you listen to watch my videos out there, that's what you may see appear on there. The second one, it's got a 0, 1 here. So the difference is this now, okay? So the first one here, again, 192.168.3 point what? We got a 1 in the ones and a 1 where?
64.
And the 64, so that gives us 65. And then we're going to go through this one. Well, we know this is 62 already because John calculated that for us a minute ago, right? Plus 64, which would give us 126. Does everybody agree on that? Does my math sound okay? Okay. This one is just changing this again to the 1 to the 0. And so it's 192.168.3. Now the one's in the 128s. So it's 128 and 1, so that gives us 129 through 128 and 62, which should be 190. Everybody follow that? Now, before we do the fourth row, I want to show you a shortcut that we could have actually saved and not done the second and third row of sitting there doing all the binary we just did a minute ago. Look over here at the network addresses. Once we did the first two, what did we know? We know that last number changes by how much? 64 each time, right? It went from 0 to 64, and what did it do here? We added 64 more to it, we added 64 more to it. So once we got the first one, the first two done, we've got a pattern there of how we could fill this whole rest thing out. And if we were doing a number of networks, I'd chosen to borrow 5 or 6 bits, we would have a bunch of these down here. You may have 60 of them down here, okay? You can sit there, you don't have to sit there and do all that binary arithmetic we just did. You just got to do it for the first two and see that it changes by 16s or whatever each time, and you can calculate it right on down. Everybody follow that? Here, we know this changes by 64s, remember? Look what happens here. The first one, we calculated, it was 1 to 62, which is 2 less than this one. Okay? Let's do the broadcast address for the first one right here real quick. Which is all ones in the host portion, okay? And on that first one, there's a 0, 0 in the host, in the network portion. So what number does that give us? We got a 1 in the 1s, 2s, 4s, 8s, 16s, 32s. Gives us what number? 63. 192.168.3.63. One bigger than this number, right? What's this number? One bigger than this number. Y'all follow on me? This number, 63, one less than this number. This number is one less than that number. Okay? Y'all follow on that? We've accounted for all of the addresses. Y'all follow? So now, if we want to know the broadcaster's a second one, what would y'all think we would do to figure out what it is?
So say it's one less than the next network.
Okay, we could go one less than here, or we could go one bigger than here, or we could add 64 to this. All of those should give us 127. Okay? Whichever way made sense to you. Or that we added 64 to there. Notice that 64 again that I was just talking about. So this last one here, that we know this one is going to be 0.191. And this one, without even doing these numbers yet here yet, we know is going to be 64 higher than this one. So 255.
Is
And
that
that's
an
back
8 or
to a
9?
standard broadcast address, right?
Is that an 8 or 9? So the 10 on the end. This one. Is it
This
1, 2,
one?
8? Yes.
That's an 8. That better?
Okay. Yeah.
So in between here is 192.168.3.193 through 254. Y'all follow on that? Y'all see what was just done? Now, in the midst of doing this, notice we've only got 62 addresses on each of these. So that's only 248 usable addresses now. Y'all follow all that? 254 is what we had before we subnetted it. So when you do subnet it, you are going to lose some host addresses, usable host addresses, okay? But you've increased your manageability, so that's one of those balancing acts. Easier to manage now, but we've got less addresses. We've got less addresses, but easier to manage. So, and depending on how many bits you borrow, it gets more inefficient, like on 3 and 4, but then starts back on efficiency again as you borrow. Continue to borrow. All right, questions on that? Y'all see where to get those from? And see how we actually are borrowing bits across on there? So if you borrow, you got to figure out how many bits to borrow. Work backwards if you know how many subnets you need. Okay? I'm going to tell you, I'll give you another instance, the opposite in just a second. But if I come in and tell John, I need our network subnetted and we need 6 subnets, then he knows to start counting from this side and borrow 3 bits to set it up with 6 subnets for us, okay? That if the constraint given is how many subnets you need. The other one is, that may not be what you may be given. You may be given instead that you need so many hosts per subnet. Do I follow on that? So they don't know how many subnets they really need. They want the most subnets they can get, but they need this many hosts per subnet. Now sometimes they'll throw you both figures and you gotta sit there and then make a decision off of it. But usually when they throw you both, they actually both lead to the same place, okay? And so you can do the calculation either way. If they told you how many hosts per subnet, throw out the bit I told you about doing reverse binary. You're going to do normal binary. The only time you do that reverse binary I just introduced you to is just to determine how many bits you're going to borrow when you know how many subnets you want. And you can sit there and calculate other ways if you want, but that's the way it makes most sense to me. Because I'll read books that'll sit there and tell you, sit there and start just writing them down as you're figuring to figure it all out. And well, why not? This way that I was taught when I took Dawes' class, that made easy sense to me to just do reverse binary. Because if you know the number of hosts, so we want, in this case we wanted 62 on each, but if we wanted, said we needed 38 hosts per subnet, what we're going to do is take the 8 bits, and we're going to start from the right because we're working in the host portion now, remember? We're looking at how much are we going to keep. And so we're going to do the 1 to 2, the 4, the 8, the 16, 32. So we're back to where we were, okay? In that case. If we'd had less than 32, we would have cut it over to here. Y'all follow on that? And that you're just going to add them up until you get to that you've got yourself covered on the number you need. And then you know where to draw the line again. That's the same line we've drawn working this way, so everything else works the same. It's just determining how the line is. If they give you the number of hosts they want per subnet, you start from the right. If they give you the number of subnets they want, start from the left. Everybody follow the difference there? And then this is the information they're looking, is this table right here. And so if you get given a problem on a test, just start drawing your table here. All y'all got to do is do the first 2 rows and then look at what the question is. If it's about the 5th row, all you got to do is figure the table down to the 5th row. Okay? Because they're going to say, for the 5th subnet, what is the usable host numbers? Or is the following a usable host number on the 5th subnet? And they'll pick a number out in the middle of here, or maybe it's off on this row, not down there on the 5th row, and so you know it's not usable on that subnet. Okay? So, just how the questions are going to read make sense off that. So, when you take the paper, take the test. Not take the paper, but you need the paper. That's where I was going to. When you take this test, I've already told you before, have a blank piece of paper there for yourself. Okay? And a pencil or a pen. When you take this test, make sure you have something you can write on it. Because if they do have questions on there, I really haven't tried the test on this newest curriculum. Remember, y'all are on a brand new edition of the curriculum. I haven't gone through this test and double checked, but it should be, since it's in the chapter, and that's most of what this chapter is about, that they're going to ask you those type questions. You need to have a piece of paper to start drawing this with. Unless you have turned yourself into some super subnetting hero, and that you can just picture it right off the top of your head. Yes, I don't need the whole table. Give me just part of it and I'll just figure it on down and jump on down to where I want. I still got to draw a table when I hit those questions, okay? And that y'all are sitting there thinking he knows subnetting pretty good, which is true. There's a number of people that are out there doing networking that all the time tell me, I got subnetting down. And when I've taught at different schools, I've actually had where other instructors at other schools, when they got to this subject in the class, went, we want you to come in here and teach it. Actually, last fall, they had me go over to the Whitfield Career Academy and teach it for the computer class, networking class there. That the instructor there, she called me and asked me to come teach her students subnetting. And she knows subnetting, but she's not got it quite as well on that, but she can do it. And she wanted me to teach it because I know how to teach it. Okay? Now, let's keep it down simpler on it. As I say, they've de-emphasized it some in your book. Okay, so I don't want to bog it as bad as it used to be at bogged down. Questions? I think John started to ask something.
Well, I was going to say, I took the little quiz online,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to ask you questions like, what's the network address for 192.168.3.182/27?
Okay. And with that,
So you got to figure out, first
so
of all,
that
your
slash
network.
27 tells you, remember, it's groups of 8. Okay? So that tells you that this part is in the network, this part's in the network, so that's 16, this part's in the network, and then the first 3 there. And so then when they're looking for the network addresses, you know it's something, because
You're
32s, so that's the 128, 64s, 32, so it's somewhere there's going to be a number from 32 through 224. Now follow on that? It's actually going to be a 32.
But at that point, your network's go what? 0, 32, 64.
So it's going to be a 32, 64, 96, and so on through to 224.
So that's what, yeah, that's what you gotta do, is just figure out what your networks are and
Because
see
that's
which one it falls
one,
into.
that's a 0, 0, 0, oh, 0, 0, 1, which would be your 32. A 0, 1, 0, which would be your 96. A 1, 1, no, but that's,
So that's
this
where it gets
doesn't make
confusing, because
sense.
even with the slash
Yeah.
27, you can still have the zero network, right?
Yes.
It just starts at zero.
So
and
you
goes
could
by
have a
32s.
0, a 32, a 64, and this is the 0, 0, 0, this is a 0, 0, 1, this is a 0,
0,
1,
1, 0.
0, and then the 0, 1, 1, which would be 96, and then the 1, 0, 0, which would be the 128, 1, 0, 1, which would be the 160, the 1, 1, 0, which would be the 192,
92.
and then
111.
the 1111.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, 101. Right? No, you already did
I already
that.
So now our 224.
That's
Okay?
what you gotta figure out, and then you just say,
And
okay,
then you just look and see,
where range it falls
Uh-huh.
into and drop down to the network
Yeah.
address.
okay? Y'all see on that? And so you're just figure out, again, back to the bits. And that's why I wanted y'all to see these bits as I did it all here. If you go back to the bits, it's the easiest thing. Now, there are people out there that know how to do this stuff without going to the bits, but sometimes I think they really go way around the world to get to someplace. To try to go from here in Ringgold to Chattanooga, the only way they know to get there is to go to Atlanta to Chattanooga. Okay? Not real efficient on that, right? And probably all of you know somebody that goes places in that way. But the only way they know how to get to some place that you're going, there's a whole lot shorter route on it, but they only know to go this long way to get there. All right? So that's what you would need for that test question, is to be able to generate that off there. Again, notice it's, once we got the first two done, we knew where to go from there on down. Okay? Thanks for taking the practice question. And that's question, that type question was on the whole.
That's what that, and that gets confusing.
Mhm. And that's
Especially when you go
where.
by 16, it's hard to add by 16.
Mhm. And that's where I'm saying, literally, to me, the best thing to do is sit there and write it down. The other one is, right before you start, since y'all haven't used binary for a long time at this point, I would write down my binary column values first thing before I got in there, because if you don't write them down and y'all haven't been using binary, that first 4 questions on the test are easy other stuff, and then you hit the 5th question and you got to do binary in it. You're going to all of a sudden forget what were those column numbers. It was a 1 and a 2, and then was it a 5 or
Yeah,
a
you just
4 or a 6? And you'll forget that it's just simple doubling, and if you had just written that down to start with, will work as a good one for you. Just give yourself those numbers, okay, while you know. If you never need to look at that list of numbers, that's fine, but it's there to get your mind back on track if you do get goofed up. Everybody got that?
Another thing that you just did that took me a while to figure out is, okay, so like slash 27, like you say, that goes 8, 16, 24, so you know it's in the networking's going to have, so the first 3 are always going to be the
The
same.
first
for that.
3 is your set network, so you know what the
Or
first 3
/27.
columns are guaranteed there. If he had have given me a slash,
See, they may pull a slash 23 on you, and that's when I'm like,
Uh-huh.
what? That
if you do a slash 23, and they may, what do we got if we got a slash 23? We've got a class B address essentially, because we know it's 16, so we know the first octet's there. and we know the second octet. So we know those two numbers are going to stay constant on everything we do. So whatever they give us as network address, you know, make sure if the answer's got something else in those two columns, throw that answer right out. So you can eliminate one of your four answers usually right off the bat on it, because everything else was 192 point something, 0.168, and one of them is 191.168, and you go, that's not in the range there, because the first two have got to be exactly the same on it. And then it's 23, well, that's 16 of them, so that leaves 7. So we're going to be using
So you know the actions in the third.
that. The line is there, and then we got the last octet. Okay, y'all follow on that? So you could be splitting before that. Most of the time, though, they're going to be just splitting down in the fourth octet. But you could have one that splits earlier.
So I was trying to like work it backwards, and I'm like, wait a minute, they took one away and all that, but really you're still going, here's 16, and then you're taking 7 from the next one.
You're borrowing
That's-
7 from the next position to add back to here. Now, if it makes sense to you to go the other direction, that'll work too. And that may be for somebody in here. It's not going to be for John, we know.
It doesn't work.
John's logic's going to work like my logic on it, but if it works the opposite for you, that works fine too. So whatever you see the system to it. And remember, that's what I tried to show you in this was, I didn't just show you how to calculate the numbers, but look at the system when you start doing it. Okay? If you'll catch that system in there, it makes it so much easier. When I took the class, my instructor had never even noticed that in there. And he started drawing this thing out on the board, and he was borrowing 4 bits. Which meant we had a chart that went way on down here with tons of rows. And he started going along, and he got to about the 4th or 5th row, and I'm going, there's a pattern to that up there. And he said, what do you mean there's a pattern? And the other people in the class are going, what pattern? And I said, look there. Look at how those numbers are all changing. And he stood there and the light came on. And he went, whoa, you're right. He said, but is that really true? And so he erased the whole board at that point and picked another number he borrowed from to see what happened. And went, ooh, that works. He said, that just cut our work down tremendously. The rest of them sitting in class went, oh, that pattern works neat. There is a pattern to it. And then they were going, how did you see that? And I said, well, I just see, in my case, you give me numbers, I see patterns in numbers. So like those things that pop up on Facebook, etc. sometimes and says, what's the next number in the sequence? You remember, y'all have all seen those where they tell you, here, this number, this number, this number, what's the next number? And you're sitting there. I'll figure out a pattern on it. Sometimes they've seen a different pattern, and so their answer is something different. I have to stop and think what was their pattern they saw on the same thing. But here you're going to be a pattern consistent on it. You don't have to worry about that's going to look like something different. Does that help everybody? Hopefully this has got it where it makes some more sense to you. Again, I'm not trying to turn you into subnetting experts. Okay, but you need to know about what's going on with it and how it works. 1, you got to go out for the test. 2, you got to do it for the final. It's going to pop back up on your own final. There's probably a question or two on the final, but with 50 questions, if you can't do it, as long as you know the rest of the stuff, you're still okay anyway. Okay, so if you do slightly on that, no big problem. If you go and take Network Plus exam, which is the network, CompTIA network, basic networking exam, it's going to ask you that on there. If you go and take A+, it could have not you doing subnetting, but it could ask you into terms of Class A, Class B, Class C type thing, and about the subnet mask on there. What is the subnet mask showing? But it's not going to do detail like we did today. But knowing the detail like today, you can definitely then do the simpler stuff. Does everybody follow on that? So teaching you a little bit more than what you may bump The same thing goes if you took the MTA, Microsoft Technology Associate Networking Fundamentals exam. There's a couple of questions pop up similar on there. If you go and take the CCNA or CCENT, you're going to have a bunch of questions pop up on there. Particularly if you do CCNT, is my understanding. I have not ever taken CCNT. I've kept saying I'm going to take it because I really think, from what I've read on it, just knowing this and knowing hardly anything else about networking, you can pass CCENT, is my understanding. Okay? Which is Cisco, Certified Cisco Network, Certified Cisco Entry Network Technician. And then CCNA's higher one. CCNENT is supposed to correspond to the first two Cisco courses we teach. And this is one of the big things, how the networks are designed. Addressing is a big thing in this course. Okay? And ever since they came out with that exam, I've kept saying I'm going to go take it. But it's like $125, $150. And I'd like to do a little preview on it, and I just haven't had a chance to. I've kept saying I'd like to do it real soon, and I just not ever had a chance to do previewing on it. Like right now, I've got to remember to go out there to CompTIA to an email they sent me because they've given me a free voucher to take an exam, and I'm going to do Security Plus. And I want to review slightly on it, but I definitely want to take it before July because they're changing Security Plus exams, and it goes weird with the new Security Plus exam. And based on what they told me is on the current one, I really think I can walk in and pass it, just like I think I can walk in and pass that. If y'all took up the $125 right now, that I could go over there to walk into exam room and should be able to pass CCNT without doing any study. Y'all's cases, y'all have to do some studying on it, but I've got 15 years of Cisco plus more years of networking before that. So now CCNA, I'd have to study a good bit to get it because Cisco 3 and 4, I teach those classes, but I don't have that stuff down that we're doing in there well because I don't use that stuff for other purposes. This I use in various classes, so I know this stuff and I got it down well in the past. So it's probably like riding a bicycle for me now, that even if I did leave it for a year or two a couple of times, that I knew immediately what I was doing again when I hit it again. Took me a minute or two, but then I was right back on. Just like if y'all haven't ridden a bicycle in a couple of years, it takes you a moment to get the balance back when you get back on it, but then off you go riding the bicycle. Because in a minute or two on it, you suddenly know how to balance yourself back on the bicycle again, right? Assuming you haven't goofed up your balance over the years. I'm still riding the bike. When I quit for about 20 years, when I picked it right back up, I was right back going fine. As I rode it Tuesday night, so I've ridden the bike recently. Any questions?
I have a question on the testing and the exams, the A+ and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certified in PC Pro with Testel.
Okay.
Would you recommend still going to get my A+ certification?
Yes. Because one thing is, most places have no idea in the world what PC Pro is. It's not a well-recognized exam.
That's what
Now,
was
I
talking about
encourage you to
class.
do it, and you get it. You've got a certification, okay? So you've got to step up on somebody that doesn't have a certification. But most people out there, when they look at it, they're not going to know what that is exactly.
Right.
Okay? Other part is, and I want to do those also, I just haven't had a chance to sit there and do them. Okay, I can do any of them actually, and I want to do the PC Pro at the end of this semester since I'm teaching it this semester. And I would assume I should be able to pass that thing without a problem.
I feel like it's a fun way to learn, doing the labs and stuff.
So, It is free with your class that uses the test out on it. I would recommend taking the certification that goes with it in there. But A plus is going to be a little bit different, but it's going to be essentially the same. It's actually PC Pro. What Test Out said when they developed the PC Pro exam is that it's supposed to be comparable to the A plus. But remember, they also had to give practice A plus exams for you too. A plus is recognized by everybody out there in the industry. So if you got A plus, everybody knows you got the PC repair certification.
Where and how often do they give the A plus exam? Where do you have to go to take it?
You can go to Walker. Okay, we got a testing center there. You can take any of the CompTIA or Microsoft tests
And
there.
how often do they give that? Once a month?
No, every day.
Oh, really?
It's in the testing center. I say every day, but it's really not every day, but it's essentially every day. That they've got hours every week.
Do we get
on.
any kind of discount or anything?
Yes. If you come see me, I can sell you vouchers for about half the price. Actually, I think it's 55% off is the current. Each of the exams, I think, are like $300 now, and I can sell you the voucher for $168 or something on that. I can give you, I need to send out what the current pricing is at, and that's any of the CompTIA exams, okay?
So Network Plus and Security
Network
Plus?
Plus and Security Plus, I can get you like the same amount of discount on them.
Okay.
A Plus requires 2 exams. One exam is hardware oriented, one exam is software oriented. That's kept changing over the years, but that's the current way on it, okay? So one of them is more hardware type stuff, one of them is more software type stuff. Networking stuff gets thrown in on both of the exams, because it actually has networking on A Plus too. The rest of them is just one exam. But for A Plus, you got to pass 2 exams. You don't have to take them at the same time. You don't have to do like I did when I got my A Plus the first time. Actually, when I did it the second time, I did do them a couple of weeks apart. But you can take one exam one day, and if you pass it, then whenever you take the other exam and pass it, at that point you become A Plus certified.
There's 2 separate exams you got to pay
2
for?
separate exams that you get paid for.
Okay.
And when I say they're like $200 or $300, $250, $300 a piece, street price, but if you'll get the voucher through me for it. Now, when you go to get the voucher, we gotta have a credit card from you, because we gotta put it in, and they'll send us a voucher number back that you put in when you register, and you register. But we gotta have your credit cards charged too at the point of ordering the voucher. The vouchers are good for 6 months, I believe it is. Pretty sure it's what CompTIA told me back at the North Carolina conference, because I was asking them on if my free voucher I would get, how quick did I have to use that voucher? So I didn't want to go request it, and I've been meaning to request it the last couple of weeks. I'll try to do it today. I didn't want to request it and know I have to use it in the next 3 days. And they said, no, you got 6 months to use it in. Okay? But if you don't use it by that time it expires, and that money's gone. Okay? Be aware of that too. There's not going to be a refund on it if it expires. They give me a free voucher when students buy some dollar number of vouchers each year. Then they give us free vouchers to the faculty to take a test each year. I'm going to say I'm going to do Security Plus with them, because I've got all the other major ones they've got out there, except for their advanced things or specialty things and some stuff. So I've got A Plus, Net Plus, iNet Plus, Server Plus, and then there's 1 or 2 others. I got some other odd names to them. But Security Plus will give me all the pluses. I should have some value at that point then. And if by chance I fail it, I fail. But so now the Cisco ones, if you make at least 70 on the final on first try, I think it is, in Cisco 2 and in Cisco 4, they will give you a voucher for the equivalent test for Cisco 2 to do the CCENT, and Cisco 4 to do the whole CCNA test for half the price, but they only do that once, and that's the only way you get a voucher from them. Otherwise, you got to pay full price with them. Microsoft, I can also sell you vouchers for half the price because of us being an Imagine Academy. But Cisco is much tighter on their discounting on it. But their test, I think their tests are 150 a piece right now, but I'm not sure, 125, 150. Same thing on Microsoft test as far as the networking standard tests. MTA tests are slightly cheaper, they're like $60 or something each. I can't tell you specifically on them because I didn't pay for them actually, that I got this when I was at conferences or something, and they gave me a free voucher when I was there. And if any of you ever get to go to some computer conferences or any training conferences, watch on them. That quite often they'll let you take some tests for free. If you get to go to a full Cisco conference, not just a regional small thing, they usually give a free test there. So I took CCNP, the first test on it, 6 months after I'd taken the first CCNP class, and realized I definitely could have passed the test like I thought I could have if I hadn't had by accident right then, because that was on the last day of class. Because I made like a 65 or something on it 6 months later, and I hadn't even studied the stuff I showed up at the conference and found out I couldn't take the test. And I went, what the heck, I would try it, but I don't pass it, and I was close. I wouldn't be anywhere on that now, because I haven't used CCNP hardly since. But if you're going to do the certification test, my recommendation to you is do them right after you do your training. Don't wait. Okay? And if you've already taken a test out class and you didn't take the certification test in it, you took it within the last 2 years, we can still get you back into the class to take the test out. One which they call pros is what they call their tests. So if you took security, a test out security class, they gave you could take the security pro, because all theirs, they put pro on the end of them.
Who's that?
Test out.
Test that.
Which is, if you take either of our A+ courses, the operating system class or the hardware class, you can use that in there, and that prepares you, and that's the test he took and passed.
Yeah, I'm about to take the Network Pro as well.
And then, if you took the other networking fundamentals class, the 1401, normally our students don't on this campus because it just jumped into this one. That one has the Network Pro in it. And then I say the security, at least one of the security classes we use associates with the Security Pro. And so I want to take those, and they've got some others that they have training stuff on. I've thought about taking some of the others. But the thing is, a lot of places out there don't know what it is, but it is a certification, and so a lot of places are going to go, okay, don't know anything about that certification, but you do have a certification. Now, the others, A+, Security Plus, the MCSE, everybody knows about those, okay? It's just these private, and there's others out there with different separate companies too. It's not as well known. But it is a certification still, and it is a step. So you do have a step in the right direction. Okay? So it's not something wasted, it's just not quite as valuable.
Right.
And that when you see ads, they're going to be looking for an A+ certified person, not a PC Pro certified person.
Right.
Although if they had come through the training with us, and they've got to have gone through Test Out Pro training someplace for them to really be aware of what in the world it is. That they might go, oh, you got PC Pro, that's close enough to A+, we'll count that as equivalent. Then again, they might not.
I don't know when I took
But
PC
it's-
Pro, it told you that it was it got you ready for CompTIA A+.
And then it's supposed to be similar to the A+.
except for the simulation. And CompTIA's putting more simulation into their stuff, but it's their simulations, not test out simulations. The other part is the CompTIA tests are going to be more current than that test was. Because you remember there was some out-of-date stuff you got asked of. Okay, because that's my problem with the test out classes. Even we just switched to the newest version of that one, of the 2 classes that use that one, that they just updated in the fall, and they're still referencing stuff on Windows XP. And I'm going,
One thing you need to know about that is.
And they're talking about it in
terms.
terms of currentness of it, not in terms of being aware of it still as an operating system you'll encounter out there. Because remember, somewhere around 40 to 50% of all computers out there still use XP, so you do need to be aware of XP. Walmart's finally updating theirs. But there's a huge number of cash registers, etc., that run on XP. ATM machines are actually using XP in most cases. A whole large number of home machines and office machines on XP. Although they're now, a lot of them are switching to 10. But a lot of people still, that if they're using an older machine, they've not upgraded it, because they got to upgrade hardware, etc., and so they stay with XP on. When they upgrade now, they are going to 10. They went to 7, or they were going to 10, they skipped Vista and they skipped 8. Because people didn't like those 2. And Windows 10 is putting, I think it's 10.3 is what they're calling it out there right now. In the last 2 weeks, updating all of y'all's machines to a new version of Windows 10, which I've heard they're calling 10.3, but I haven't seen that many writings out there. I've had several people ask me about Windows 10.3, so obviously somewhere out there something says it's 10.3. 10.1 or 2 was, they actually called anniversary, which was back last summer. So I'm surprised this is 3, because I always thought this would have been 2, was their next update. Because their intention is they're going to stay on 10 from here on forever. And they're just going to keep updating 10. 10 is perfection.
Basically.
It works mostly.
Okay? And remember, there was no Windows 9.
You know, you mentioned that free Net Academy, they have like a little security course you can take.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that, and then I took they have tests out there, practice quizzes for like A+ and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And after doing that, I took like just the security part of the A+, because they had to break it down like that. Got like a 96, so that really helps. I wouldn't know any of that without having, you kind of know it, but you don't really know,
Mm-hmm.
well, this kind of virus is called this kind of virus is called this.
Well, that's confusing on all that, and I can't keep ever.
Yeah,
And
but
so
if you do that,
that
Cisco can
probably,
get-
when I do Security Plus, there'll probably be a few questions will confuse me on that, because sometimes keeping worms and viruses and such straight of the
A
difference
Trojan
on
from a
them.
worm, from a,
Because Trojan I understand, but a worm versus a virus, those two, I sort of mix them up a little bit on it. Because Trojan is one that's planning to go off at a later date.
is something else, and a worm self-replicates across the
The
network.
worm self-replicates itself through because it's like on a real earthworm where you can
Yeah,
just
yeah.
cut it in
I use
two
this
and it
one.
keeps each of the pieces crawls on off.
But the Cisco course kind of goes over all that. They don't go real in depth. It doesn't. It's
Mhm.
not like mind breaking. Like I can't take this, but it's pretty
And
good.
then the other part is you should have been able to print yourself out a certificate when you finish that.
yeah, you get a little certificate,
Mhm.
and
And
so that
y'all
got
will
me to
get
thinking.
that for this class, and you will also get, whenever I send it to you, because I've got them, for the packet tracer class, okay?
You can get that online also.
So I'm going to send you all those certificates, but you should be able to actually go in your settings that you can print it out yourself.
So that got me to thinking they probably offer other stuff for free, and they also have like a little thing on basic. They offer an extensive Linux course, but they just broke out
The
part of
free
it.
one, I've done both of the free ones. And the first one doesn't do much on it. The can't remember what they called it. I think it's Linux Hatched, if I remember right.
It's got like NDH or something.
NDG is the one that
NDG.
developed it, because NDG is the company that does NetWebs, and that's the equipment you're actually using the stuff off of. But both of them are good on teaching the basics of Linux, because I just finished the second one in the fall. Nice part about those Linux ones that they got out there, they're not just telling you about it, but they've actually got your screens
Got a
split in
simulator,
two,
yeah.
so that you've got data telling you all about it on this side. You've got it's actually not a simulator sitting on the other side. It actually is a running copy of Linux sitting on the other side that runs off of a machine, and that you start and you can try all of your commands in that Linux on this side, because it's running on a NDG NetWeb machine at NDG. Now, it won't save anything for you there, but you can sit there and play all with the commands and everything, and you're really using real Linux doing it. And it's the first two courses, the Hatched and Essentials, I think it is, if I remember right, are both free classes. Now, they got two others that go beyond that, and they charge $35 or something. Okay, and those are done by NDG and Linux Plus, if I remember, Linux LPI, Linux Professional Institute, who is the people that certify people in Linux. And those are neat ones out there. There's a C#, I think it is, C++ or C++ course out there, I think similar now. And there's another one on something else like C that's going to be appearing out there. Cisco's putting a whole bunch of those out there. The Internet of Everything that they've got out there, that's an interesting little course for you on it. There's a couple of those on it, and there's some others. So there's a bunch of free classes that Cisco offers y'all also. And y'all can keep on getting into those after you finish this course, because your login to Cisco NetAcad site stays active. You just won't be able to get in this course anymore on down, but all of their free classes, and as they add free classes out there, y'all can get into for the next few years. Okay? So even after you finish this class, go back out there and look occasionally. They may have a class that interests you, or that your employer or whoever you're working for at that point may want you to take, and that you could actually do for free out there. And then, like I say, there's a couple of them they charge for, and then there's some of the classes you'll see listed there, like this one. You have to take it through an instructor-led class at some location, and how charges work on that depends on the school. All right, any other questions? We've actually used up the full amount of time.